One of our major kind of public actions is engaging with people, getting them registered to vote. And since our inception, we've registered close to 1,000 people in this area, which is great, and we want to make that number much larger by the next election. So just kind of to give me a feel for it, how many of you have registered people to vote or had some sort of training or on-the-job training? Okay. Good to know. Hello, come on in. Well, in Indiana, you don't have to have any sort of formal training or a little badge to register people to vote. Anybody can. But obviously, it's a good idea to know what you're doing. So that's kind of what this session is about. I did write some dates on my makeshift whiteboard up there. So these are kind of important because voting registration ends about a month before the primary and then again about a month before the general election. So April 6th is when it ends. The primary is not until May 5th. Then it'll open up again May 19th, close October 5th, and then the general election is November 3rd. So if you approach somebody and they're like, I'll register, it's a long way away, I'll get there. It's a good idea to remind them, the cutoff is coming up fairly quickly, and if you're not registered then, you don't vote. So some dates to remember. Our goal is not just to register voters. I mean, those numbers are great, but if they don't actually vote, it doesn't mean much that they were registered. So we've got a couple of ways to kind of help remind people about upcoming elections, and those sites are up here. I know they're a little bit hard to see, but Turbo Vote is a site, and we have a good Lafayette Indivisible kind of branded bit of Turbo Vote. If you're not familiar with Turbo Vote, you can register through that site, and it will send you reminders. Hey, your election's coming up in this amount of time. You're able to get information about the candidates, find your polling places, that kind of thing. And the really nice thing, I think, is that you do get that reminder of, hey, this election's coming up, this primaries at this time. IndianaVoters.in.gov is also up there. That's the state site that you can check your registration, which if somebody tells you they're registered when you're registering voters, or even for yourself, you should double check that and make sure that you actually are still registered. You can do that on the state site. You can also register to vote on that site. The thing with both of these sites, they're super convenient. It's a great way to get people to register, but you have to have an Indiana state ID or driver's license number to be able to use those sites. There is a way, though, to register people without a state ID, and that's the federal form, which I'm going to hand to you because I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. On this federal form, all you need is the last 4 digits of a social security number to register to vote, which is great when you're registering. But you do need to make sure that whoever you're registering understands that they'll have to have that state ID in order to actually vote. So that is something to go over with them. It's also an option if you're registering somebody and they're a college student and they're set on registering with their home address and they're not going to be there. They're not going to go back to the polling place, or they're not going to be able to get to the polling place on election day. You can help them sign up for an absentee ballot, and that you're able to do that on both of those sites as well. So that's also an option. So again, our goal is to get people to actually vote, not just to register. On that federal form, there's just a couple things I want to go over. If you've used this a lot of times, you already know how it works, but for those of you that didn't, I want to go over some things. There's a few things that you absolutely have to make sure are done correctly so that the registration goes through. There's some boxes up there at the top that have to be checked, saying that they are a citizen and saying that they will be 18 on or before election day. That's a question that came up before our session started. You don't have to be 18 when you're registering. You don't have to be 18 for the primary. You just have to be 18 for election day. So on November 3rd. So as long as you're going to be 18 by November 3rd, you're good.
Can you vote the primary?
You can vote as primary
Okay.
as long as you're going to be 18 on election day. Yeah. Just it. You want to make sure they fill out their name, address, obviously, date of birth. The telephone number 5 there, that's optional. But if the county clerk going through this and registering them can't read something and there's a phone number, they generally will call and check and make sure, get the information correct and not just throw it out. So we encourage them to put a phone number just so that anything can be double checked. Again, it's just the last 4 digits of the social security number. Number 6, the ID number. That could also be a driver's license number. Either one on the federal form is accepted. I think the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. You can ask me questions if you have them. The bottom of the form is kind of where some of the different things come up. That's where you can change a name or an address. So if they're registered under one name or under one address and need to change it, that can be done there. Also, if on C here, you don't have to have a home address to register to vote. So if you're homeless, you can fill in an approximation of where you sleep at night, and that counts to register to vote. Also, D down at the bottom, you would only sign this. It's not if you're helping somebody figure out how to fill it out. If they're not able to physically write on it, then you would sign at the bottom that you're filling it out for them. All right, that was a super quick thing. Questions? Yeah.
Just to double check on number 6, so you put in either your Indiana state driver's license ID number or the last 4 digits of your.
Absolutely, yes. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Some of my neighbors are very elderly and have handwritings not really legible. That would be a time that I would fill out for them and let them sign.
And you would sign that you assisted them.
Should they? Is there a problem with the handwriting being recognized as theirs later? Is that a problem here?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
And especially, that would be a great time to put a way to contact them. So if somebody wanted to verify,
Yeah, right.
they could say, yes, absolutely, she helped me fill it out because I can't write clearly or whatever.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions about that federal form?
That's a dumb question.
There aren't any, but yeah.
I know. Who doesn't register besides new people to the country and young people that are turning 18? I mean, there are a lot of people that just don't register.
Yes. There are people who just never have.
I mean, I know there are, but there's that many.
Yeah. Yes.
Isn't it 40% of Americans don't vote? Who
I
can?
know that.
I mean, it's a huge number.
But I'm not sure the statistics of who's absolutely not registered. I mean, there are a lot of registered voters who don't vote, but then yes, we find a lot of people who aren't registered. And that was actually the next thing that I was gonna come to. When you're, part of what we do is go to public events and ask people if they're registered. And you get a lot of, no, and I don't want to. And I think part of that is just your first response when a stranger comes up and asks you if you want to do something, just no.
Give us your information.
Yeah. But you kind of have to go beyond that because you'll get the age thing. Oh, I'm not going to be, I'm not 18 yet. Well, you can still register. I've also had at least personally 3 people say I can't. And then when I find out more, they were incarcerated previously and they are seriously under the impression that they no longer get the right to vote. And in Indiana, you do. As long as you're not in prison at that moment, you can vote. Yes.
I wear a sign. I'm afraid to ask those questions, but I wear a sign that said, "Served your time, you can vote."
It's a great idea.
And it's just my own little handmade, so I don't have to ask that question, but it's great big,
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Thank you. I can't ask those questions like,
It doesn't bring it up, but it makes the point.
yeah.
That's a great idea. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Maybe I should make buttons and hand them out
You
to
should.
That
voters.
might not be a bad idea.
I mean, to,
No, really, I do like that because it's not something that comes out right away. It's,
no.
well, why aren't you? And don't you want to be in?
But when you're at, say, the food finder pantry, trying to register people to vote, and they tell you, I don't vote, you do want to know why,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't, I tend not to ask. But anyway, thank you.
No, I like that idea. Thank you.
I have a quick question. too.
Absolutely.
Are kids in high school automatically registered as soon as they turn 18?
No.
But your driver's license, are they?
You're not
that yet?
There's no automatic in Indiana at all. believe the driver's branch gives you the option here.
Yes, sometimes, not always.
And the League of Women Voters is really great about going to high schools and talking to the students and getting them to register, which is wonderful. But yeah, unfortunately there's no automatically getting registered.
So they have to go through something.
They have to do something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the great thing about these websites is I know my kid, he might not talk to you and fill out a form, but he'll do it online, without any problem. So those are great resources to send people toward if they're not registered.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I know I changed my address online, but I wasn't sure if you could actually sign up online also.
Yeah.
After
Yep.
online.
If you've got that state ID number.
Do you know if there's any legislation that they're trying to put forward that would automatically register? Because I know in like Oregon, you're automatically registered.
I know there are different states going for that right now. I don't think there's any bill in Indiana that would be working toward that.
There's not a bill that's going to
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
A lot of people do the same.
Or it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense if you have the ID there, so worry about that you got, that should be enough, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of should be's.
Should be, yes. I'll be quiet, move on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that's all really that I had is just talk to people if they're not registered, get them registered, and I will pass my time on to Chris here.
Thank you. So we talked a bit about voter registration, and I'm really grateful for that because a lot of the mechanical parts of voter registration are not well understood. And so now I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about a campaign that we do to register voters in our communities and to learn more about our communities. It's called the Working Hoosiers Vote Campaign. It's a campaign that we started in 2018 with our coalition partners, so Greater Lafayette Immigrant Allies, the Urban Task Force of Greater Lafayette, and Surge, Showing Up for Racial Justice, Greater Lafayette. And we started this campaign because we started having some questions about what we were hearing in the community. We have ideas about what we want to see in the community, and we have ideas about the policies that will get us there. But sometimes we don't know, are we actually acting in the way the community wants us to? So in 2018, we decided to merge our voter registration and our desire to learn more about our communities into a campaign that did issue listening in our communities in Lafayette and registered them to vote at the same time. And we found that this helped us to answer some important questions, like what do people really feel about issues in their community? Whose priorities are we already hearing? Are we hearing just the priorities of wealthy people and businesses and the people who already have power? Or are we hearing from people who might not have power? Are we hearing from people who are not included in the electoral system in the same way? And so we came up with the Working Hoosiers Vote as a way to answer those questions and as a way to agitate in our communities around deeply held local issues. And we discovered pretty quickly that we had to have a plan for how we were going to canvass if we're doing voter registration. It's a lot of different types of skills to do issue listening and to do voter registration. So I just wanted to talk for a minute about about why issue listening is important. We learn more about our communities from the people in communities, and we can use that information to inform our actions. It also allows us to encourage people to visualize how they can help the situation for themselves and their families by engaging with the electoral system. One thing that I like to tell people, and that I've heard a lot, is that people don't register to vote and vote just because they can, right? People don't really think of electoral politics that way usually. When people want to register to vote, they want to register to vote for a reason. Right? You aren't going to get a lot of people who want to register to vote just by asking them, are you registered to vote? Sometimes you have to go into a bit more depth about why people are registered to vote. Working Hoosiers Vote allows us to create a framework for understanding and coding the messages that we get from people into the community into actions that we can take to further our activism. So one of the method for doing this is training, canvassing, and facilitated discussion. So when we are doing canvassing, we are very intentional about training folks who are on door. And that's because it's really a large set of skills. It's a short one-on-one discussion with people we don't know at their houses, facilitating responses, so getting responses from folks, listening to those responses, taking those notes and coding them into usable information, and making a voter registration or get out the vote ask on top of the information that we provide. So that's actually a lot of information to deliver in a short period of time. So we like to train folks before we do working teachers vote sessions, right before the session. And that way folks know just some best practices for being on door. Like one really simple one that we teach everybody is, this one people don't know, is that when you're knocking a door, don't hop knock it. Okay, we're not the cops. Okay, like that's something that a lot of folks don't know, is that there's a friendly way to knock doors and there's an unfriendly way to knock doors. And so it's just some of those small things, and then the larger things, like how do we take notes? How do we look at which address we're looking at? So those type of things help us to increase our own activist skills and to get the information that we need to center our action. Another big part of Working Futures Vote is our Get Out the Vote events. Every year we host Indivisible for the polls around Halloween. It's an early voting event, and we do it in Boston. The event is a great way for us to cap the canvassing part of our campaign, and it gives folks an opportunity to vote early. And that's something that we're also really trying to get people to do, is to vote early, because election day comes and goes really quickly, and people don't have a plan to vote and a plan to vote early, then a lot of times it'll come and go.
What's that event called?
Spooky Stroll to the Polls. It is the best name for an event ever, and I'm really grateful to Emily Pearson from YWTF for coming up with that, because it's just a great name. I think Planned Parenthood is stealing it from us, which is fine. Thank you for that. I'm grateful. So in 2018, the campaign has changed a bit over the last couple of years. In 2018, the first year that we did the campaign, we drew our maps based on GIS data. As with all of our issue listing canvassing, we do not and cannot screen people by party identification. So we're not using a system like MAN or Vote Builder, the Republican counter, to screen people who we do or do not want to talk to. Instead, we screen neighborhoods based on the number of rental properties, the average land value, other things that we can use to code for income in class. And that way we can ensure that we're hearing the voices of poor folks and more marginalized folks, instead of hearing the voices of just the same people all the time.
Okay, so you said you can't do that or you don't do that?
There are a couple reasons why we can't. And one of them is that we're in coalition with Greater Lafayette Immigrant Allies, which is a 501c3 organization.
Okay.
They cannot do any partisan political activity. So for purposes of this campaign, we are also behaving as a C3, which means that we don't engage in partisan political activity. So we don't tell people who to vote for during this campaign. We don't tell people which parties to support and things like that. We're really centering this on values and how we listen to those values. And that doesn't mean that we can't use that information to inform our political actions later, right? So there's a bit of finesse there, but that's a very good question. But what we've ended up doing, what we did in 2018, we registered voters on door during canvassing sessions, and we used a general ask to get broad information about people's deeply held local issues. So that would look sort of like asking folks on door, well, we're out here today with Working Futures Vote, and we're canvassing to learn about people's deeply held local issues. Are there any issues with your local government that you want to raise your report? And that type of ask. And we discovered we got 10 or 5? 10, okay. So we registered voters and used a general ask. We found a large number of people from the 2018 canvassing reporting tenants issues and issues with local government. So those were kind of things that we saw and we noted, and so when we came into 2019, we started using the information that we gathered in the process, the things that we wanted to do in terms of process, and we started improving upon those in planning the campaign. So in 2019, we targeted more intentionally neighborhoods with high proportions of rental properties, usually around 70% or more. This allowed us to learn more specific information about issues we uncovered in 2018, while still making space for folks to speak up about their other deeply held local issues. So in 2019, instead of asking people very generally, we were asking people about tenants issues and tenants rights issues, and how they felt about their relationship with their landlords, how they felt about, do they know their rights as tenants? Do they know, what they can do in situations where they might not be having a good time? Or if they're having a really excellent time, we wanted to hear those stories as well. And that's kind of one of the things about canvassing is that we don't really know what we're going to hear. Some people might not want to talk to us about that at all. We have folks who, instead of talking about wanting to talk about tennis issues, will want to talk about their neighbors, or they don't like the mayor, or local gossip. People just like to talk about it. So we have to kind of create space for that data as well. In 2019, as I said, we used a more specific ask on door. This helped us to get more relevant information and made the voter registration ask easier. Because when we put the voter registration ask at the end of the discussions that we're having, people are much more likely to register to vote. That's something that we found from doing this, is that when we just do canvassing that's only voter registration, like we've done in previous years, that doesn't get us a very high rate in terms of actually registering people to vote. But when we attach it to something specific, people are much more likely to want to register to vote. Yes, and in 2019, we also started using a two-touch system. And that means that we are canvassing each area more than once. So we first went out into every neighborhood that we had cut off or that we had cut in Detroit, and we dropped voter registration information with them, and we did no canvassing during that drop. So we were just there to drop door hangers with information about when does the voter registration period end, when does early voting begin, where can you go to find your election locations, and where can you, for the time that was during the voter registration period, where can you register to vote online. And that information was really useful because when we come back again, we canvass those same places, and they know that we're coming because we told them that we're coming. So that was a really important part of getting people to talk to us more and getting people to have more information for us and to be more open, talking with us about their deeply held relations.
Did you say you let them know you were returning on the door hanger?
Yes, on the door
Did you say,
hanger,
like, we're
as well as
coming
we're
back?
coming back this weekend. And we gave a bit of a range, and that way folks, had some opportunity to get questions ready. If folks didn't want to, that's something that, we also saw a lot of that, but we did see about a 10 to 12% increase in the number of our knock rate. So the number of people who were actually answering the door when we knocked on their doors the second time. And we also had a much higher rate of actual conversations. We had a rate of about 25% conversation rate on door, and that's much higher than knock rates for most campaigns. So that's much higher than the rate of people who just answer the door, even if they don't want to say anything. So we were actually really proud of that process improvement, because it shows that there are methods that we can use to improve our campaigns to make sure that we're reaching people more effectively and actually pipelining them into voter registration and early voting. That's sort of the breadth of the campaign. We're really grateful for all our coalition partners. This year, we are going to be canvassing again to gather more information, register voters, and get out to vote. We will be running some more and holding educational events about tennis rights frameworks, so that folks in our neighborhoods in our community can learn more about how tennis rights impacts their lives. And then we are going to be this isn't on my sheet, but we're going to be doing 2 rounds of canvassing. So we're going to be canvassing before the primary election in the spring, and then again the fall elections before January. And that way we hope to
5 minutes.
and so on, registering voters as possible, get them to vote and get them learning and agitating. I can take your question now.
For your data collection, are you using Excel or something
Yeah,
else?
so we have sort of a system. We actually, a lot of times we will have people write our canvassers write it down on paper, just because sometimes the technology hasn't been great for us. And we have had situations where we do it on the either like an Excel spreadsheet or something that we create in like Google Forms or something like that. And we've had some problems. So usually what we'll do is we'll have our canvassers write that down, and then the organizing team, we will code that all into an online form. And then we can get that info, we can extract it from the results. That's something that we've kind of gone back and forth on, is whether we should have people do online entry immediately or code it later. It seems like we're fine with doing the writing it down, because most people write pretty legibly, right? Monica does.
Okay, so prior to the midterms, we went out and did canvassing,
Yes.
but we did it with a group that it was really targeted addresses where people had registered as Democratic.
Of course, yes,
And then we went to kind of encourage them to vote. They may
Yes.
not have voted in other elections. Are you coordinating with that group as far as?
So one thing that we're doing is that we separate our partisan political and our non-partisan non-political activity. So we absolutely will be doing some canvassing later for candidates in the year. It won't be working through just about canvassing. That'll be something that Indivisible does by itself.
Okay, well, this wasn't specifically for a specific candidate. What it was more to encourage them to get out and vote, but I understand what you're saying about, but it was targeted and more, the people that had registered as Democrats in the past and may not have voted in the last.
So they were using van, right? And we have van access, so we can do very similar things in terms of things. But of course, since we're a nonprofit, some of our activity is constrained in the amount of things that we can do, right?
Okay.
So basically 20% of our activity can be partisan political activity, the other 80% cannot.
Okay.
So that's
Talk to me about the voter ID, the state ID. So if I have a driver's license, I can register to vote, but if I don't have one, what do I get? And how do I get it?
To actually go to the poll,
Yeah, to register to vote, you said I have to have a,
you can register on the federal form, which is your social security number, but then you can't go to the polls. To go to the polls, you need either a driver's license or a state ID.
so there's a state ID card,
Where
and
you
you go to where, the
The
courthouse?
driver's license, correct?
Driver's license, okay.
one
So it's in lieu of a driver's license, it's a state card that, and you get it at the DMV.
And isn't there a charge for that ID? Isn't it like $10 or $25? $10 for the pure ID.
Chris, can
Why
you
am I
talk about
surprised?
ABN, what it is?
about what?
The acronym you use, ABN.
Oh, VAN, the VAN, Voter Access Network. That's what they call it. Yeah, I just have called it the VAN for so many years. They have an app that's called the minivan. I get my van.
So on the, knowing where to go with canvassing, are you using Tippecanoe County's GIS from the county government website or what?
We're using that. We're also using some census.net data. And so we're overlaying that on a graphical information system and then using those things together to draw it out. It's somewhat sophisticated, and I'm really grateful for the really hard work of Vanessa Pacheco from Everyone's Task Force and Jessica Johnson, who put in a lot of work for drawing them out. So I'm really grateful for that.
Just back to the question of coordinating some of the voter registration efforts that you're doing, is that coordinating with other, like, the Democratic?
We don't coordinate, in terms of voter registration, we do not coordinate with parties.
Like, how do you know that you're not, how would different groups not know whether they're?
Well, this is a coalition thing, right? So this is Indivisible, Greater Lafayette Immigrant Allies, Surge, and Wider UCF. So in terms of what the Democrats are doing, I'm sure that they're also registering voters. I can tell you that probably it's actually the nonprofits doing more voter registration work than the parties. So I think if they are doing some voter registration work, a lot of that's like candidates and things like that. And
So they're doing, the Democratic Party's probably doing more just canvassing and get out the vote. Already,
I'm sure they're doing both, right? It's not mutually exclusive, but I do know that they are registering voters, but I think that a lot of their work is going to be getting out the vote.
So this is to get everybody to vote, regardless of whether they're voting one way or the other.
Yeah.
And theoretically, why would I want a certain party to vote?
Because it's illegal for us to refuse to vote, to register people to vote by party ID. I cannot refuse to register somebody to vote if they tell me they're voting a certain way.
Right.
So, and we're very intentional about that. If anybody wants to register to vote, that's something that we're going to do.
But by targeting areas with a high amount of rental properties and things like that,
We're gonna
it's kind of
get
a direct way of.
Well, we're gonna get people who like more marginalized folks and poor folks, and yeah, they might have some political leads that tend to go a certain way,
But not necessarily.
but not
I
necessarily.
mean, when we canvass,
Right, I was gonna say Monica
we
stands
found
a lot.
Trumpers and.
Right, and that's the thing is that we're gonna find all types of people, and we're gonna find a lot of opportunities to hear about people's usually helpful issues. And sometimes there are gonna be things that like are not in our frameworks, there are gonna be things that we don't agree with, and we don't need to listen to those things. We don't know, necessarily to center folks who have really bad ideas, right? We're looking for folks who have.
So one of the things, I don't know if you mentioned, are you going to be giving them like sites that where they can vote early? Because when we went around the vote, we did that.
Yeah, and one thing that we're pretty fortunate about in Tippecanoe County is that we have vote centers. So if you are registered to vote in Tippecanoe County.
It's online.
Oh, there's one. Oh.
Okay, I know this one too. So I will.
And you only get from the center.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm serious. Thanks.